Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me and my very special guest. He does it all. He is a renowned actor, singer, songwriter, director, producer, novelist, and platinum-selling recording artist. Rolling Stone magazine put him on their list of the 100 greatest singers of all time. You know him from such musicals as Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, The Life, The Producers, Hair, and I have known him since his show-stopping Broadway debut in the first revival of Grease. Well, now his critically acclaimed, award-winning autobiographical show, Ham, a Musical Memoir, which is based on his book, has been beautifully filmed and is streaming on Broadway HD. His first fiction novel, The Substance of All Things, which has just been released, has garnered rave reviews. Please say hello to my dear friend, Sam Harris.
Hi, Richie. You'll always be Richie to me.
Exactly. Listen, Cheetah still calls me Richie. I have a picture. I found all these old pictures of you that you signed to me and everything else. And I was like, I've literally known you since your Broadway debut in Grease.
You know what? I thought it was that. I felt like it was like years before when I was at Rainbow and Stars. Is that possible?
Yeah, so I did know you before then. So, you know, the weird thing is...
You're not forgettable, my dear. I remember you very well.
Well, I, like everybody else, first started following you on Star Search, which we'll get into later in the show. But I had my Sam Harris album. I had Sam I Am. I mean, I wore overalls for a while. I wore Converse. I wore my, those Joan Collins padded coats. Everybody wanted to be Sam Harris.
Oh, my, except Sam Harris.
Well, we'll get into that, too. But before we get started, how are you? How's the family? And where are you all?
We're in Los Angeles. We're doing great. I mean, it's... Uh-oh.
No, that's fabulous.
Okay. We're in LA. Danny, my husband, is working from home. He was traveling a lot. That's his business. Yeah. But he's been home, Zooming from home. Cooper is 12. He'll be 13 next month, and he's in Zoom school, and he actually is thriving in it. I am somewhat busy because of the release of the film and the release of the book. But, I like everyone. I'm making my own bread. I'm grinding my own meat. I'm like making pasta. I've gained so much weight, but I am on a mission, Richie. I'm on a mission. Because I'm walking now 4 or 5 miles in the morning. I'm on the exercycle for an hour. And then I have a trainer 3 times a week in my garage where I've just made like a little home gym. And so I'm determined to get this fatness off. My neighbor saw me working out every day and she said, "Are you preparing for a role?" And I said, "No, I'm fat. I'm fat."
We've all gained this extra poundage. You look fabulous from the shot you're in here.
Well, thank you.
It must be crazy because this is the new now. Everybody who I've StreamYarded with around the world, everyone's like, "Richie, don't look at the left and don't look at the right because there's boxes everywhere. This is the area you live in. This is the new now."
That's right. It's very peculiar. And yet, I was talking to Nicole when we were waiting to come on, and there have been some silver linings to this. I mean, I don't think that we thought of reaching out in this way. Like, look what's happened with you and this show. And it's just huge because now it's not limited to who's available or you're on a carpet or whatever. It's giant. My son is thriving during Zoom, and I've been able to teach like master classes and go see kids work and things you did. My son is taking piano lessons from this genius, brilliant young man who's teaching at NYU. I mean, I never would have thought of that. It's crazy.
Well, I think we all have to find the silver lining. You've always been a positive person. I have. My glass is always half full. And,
Yes.
I was going to ask you, with the vaccine starting to roll out and, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, do you still have good days and bad days, or are they all getting better?
Oh, boy. I have good days and bad days. The bad days, I don't really let them settle in too much. And I think it's an advantage that I have 2 dogs and a kid and a husband, because it kind of gets me, going. Because the truth is, if it were just me, I probably would be in bed with the covers pulled over my head. but we have to make our lives and we have to keep busy, and someone keeps calling me and I don't know who they are. Anyway, so yeah, but I think it's getting better. And then it's crazy because we haven't seen our friends and family, and like Cooper hasn't been going to school. And then there's this crazy nervousness about what it's going to be like to go back. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's I think we're going to be more connected. Like everyone's going to make sure, I'm not going to text on my phone, or they're actually going to give eye contact, because we haven't had any personal contact with anybody except on the small screen.
Yeah, it's nuts. We did meet for the first time in a year. We met with a group of friends in a park, at a picnic, sitting away. And it was amazing. And it's like, I can't wait for the hug,
Because I'm a big hugger and everything. My husband's like, used to kiss everybody. And he's like, you got to get used to that again. But it's like, you still got to give an elbow or whatever else. But
yeah, are we going to get used to that again? Do you think I think it's going to be a long time before we even.
Yeah, I think people are going to step back for a second. They'll be like, don't come near me. Oh, you can come near me.
Yes, you can.
It's a year next week, March 12th. It's going to be a year since we shut down. Does it seem surreal sometimes? Like, does it seem like a year ago or 4 years? And then sometimes it feels like 2 months. Like, isn't it weird this whole year?
Yeah. And well, you talk about no sense of time. Like, I often don't even know what day it is because they're all exactly the same, And I miss, as you know, I'm always trying new things and reinventing myself and because I like to do lots of different kinds of things. But this has affected things. I mean, there's been no live performances. There's been nothing like that. Even getting together with my long-term music director and musical soulmate, Todd, we can't get together and just sing or write or create or it's tricky. And by the way, when this started happening, everyone made fun of me because I went to Costco and got enough stuff to live for 17 years underground. I have a refrigerator in the house, a refrigerator in the garage, and a deep freeze. And like all these stacks of bins. It was insane. Everyone made fun of me. And then they were like, can I have some toilet paper?
Thank you. You were a showbiz prepper.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, they call it people prep for the end of the world or whatever. But I had friends do the same thing. They were like, you better start getting like wipes and paper towels and toilet paper and all this stuff. Because I'm a paper towel. I live on paper towels. I'm very sorry, I know. But I have some frames and it's like, I can't do rags.
I use them for everything. And I feel so guilty. But it's kind of my one bad environmental vice.
Mine too. I have to congratulate you on the new film version of your award-winning autobiographical show, Ham, a Musical Memoir. It is sensational. I have watched this 6 times already, Sam, just so you know.
Oh my God.
Well, I have known you forever, but the point is it's seamless. It's flawless. It's so beautifully photographed. I mean, just looking at your audience of how happy they are, but the journey you take us on, you should be so proud of this. Let's go back to the beginning. It's based on your critically acclaimed book, Ham, Slices of a Life. How did you come about to write the book originally?
Well, I've always written, and I've written for the stage, and I've written for different things, but also I had written a few like humorous essays and stuff. And I found myself, when Cooper was born, I was finding things because I didn't want to travel. I certainly wasn't going to go on tour, and I didn't want to. So I started doing things where I could do from home. So I started writing. And after I had 5 or 6 stories, I sent them to my friend, Frank Langella, who is also a wonderful writer, in addition to being like the greatest actor. And he said, Joe, he loved them. And he said, keep writing, keep writing. Do not judge them. Do not go back and edit. Just write. And don't think about, because, we always think about what's this going to be? Who am I going to sell it to? But he said, stay out of that head place. Just write. Excuse me. So I continued to write. And at a certain point, sort of serendipitously, I connected with an editor at Simon & Schuster. And I was like, do you mind looking at these? And it was crazy, Richie, because I think I gave him the pages in June And by like July, I had my deal with them. That doesn't happen. That was really, really an anomaly. And then I continued to write, and the book came out in 2014. But I love writing. I love it. I love everything about it. I love words. I love punctuation. I love rhythm. It's one of those things that I can realize, oh my God, I've been doing this for 8 hours and I forgot to eat, you know?
Well, that's one way of going on a diet.
That's true. And then,
yeah,
the way that it developed was when the book came out, instead of doing like, bookstores and things like that, because it was me, we did promos in theaters. Todd and I went around and we did them in theaters where I would read excerpts from the book and then sing a song or two or whatever. When we were doing it at 54 Below, Susie Dietz, who was a brilliant, wonderful producer and a friend of mine, she and Elaine Krause were there, and they said, "Do you want to continue to develop this into a show?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So Todd and I went to New York and worked with Billy Porter for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. And he really helped it dramaturgically. He would say, "I don't want to hear about it. I want to see it." So all of a sudden I was playing 12 different characters, and he really encouraged me to get out of the book, because I wrote it and it's about me, right? So he encouraged me to get out of that and write scenes between different people and stop being so literal. And then he would say, "You need to write a song about such and such. Yeah. I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Old school. You're old school.
Totally. So then, and he directed the New York production, and then we came to LA, and a brilliant director, his name is Ken Sawyer. Yeah. He's truly magical and inventive and smart and a great actor's director, but also just the way he conceives things and perceives things. He's quite brilliant. So he did the LA production, and then we filmed it and at the Pasadena Playhouse, which is a glorious old-fashioned theater, beautiful, big, fabulous place. And it was very important to me that it not just feel like I was making an archive, that it really feel like a film. And so Andy Pachogal is a director friend of mine that we had done a couple of projects on, and he had never done anything like this, but boy, did he know how. You know, we had 5 cameras on platforms, and we had cranes, and we had dollies, and we shot 2 shows. And then the next day we came in, to do pickups so we could get in my face and all that.
Wow. Well, I know the show won numerous awards, including 3 Ovation Awards for Best Musical, Best Actor, and Best Musical Director for Todd Schroeder. I mean, not only do you share the stage with Todd, you also wrote songs together. Talk about that collaboration, because, it's a one-man show, but it's not, because he's up there with you and comes in at these beautiful, crucial moments, and the songs are terrific. Talk about that collaboration.
Well, Todd and I have been working together for almost like 30 years, like 28 or 29 years. I was just a small child when we first began collaborating. He's like a father figure to me. He's brilliant. I say musical soulmate, and I mean it. He and I just click on such a deep level, and we're like brothers, and our kids have grown up together, and he's the easiest thing for me to talk about. He's truly brilliant. And so when we write, it's very easy in that there's no pretension about it, or it's just the best idea wins. We're able to say, "Oh, that sucks. Let's try this." There's none of that. And so when we wrote songs, typically I come in and I have a lyric and an idea for something, and then we just start playing and we just start singing and doing. And it's great. It's great. I wrote a few myself. Todd and I wrote a few. And of course, there's a lot of cover things from different elements, especially in the Star Search section when, I'm singing songs that I sang on the show. All these, slit your wrist ballads.
Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to start, but Hamnet is more than just your personal story. It's really universal. I mean, everybody can relate to your story and this film. Don't you agree?
Well, I mean, certainly there's some stuff about my childhood in Oklahoma and about being gay and coming to terms with that in that time, in that culture. But I do feel and hope that it is universal, because it's really about, for anybody who's ever felt outside, I mean, and who hasn't, frankly, who hasn't? And about dreaming and wanting something. And, I had a lot of personal obstacles along the way, but I do believe the message is universal. The specifics are mine, but I hope it's relatable.
Well, of course it's because, you deal with so many things like your first love. And you take us all back to, oh my gosh, remember mine. And then, your attempted suicide. I mean, that's a big deal that a lot of people thought about when they were growing up, being an outsider, being gay, having no one to talk to or anybody to understand anything. How hard were they for you to sort of put into the show and relive? Were there challenges for you personally or emotionally, or was it cathartic for you to move through it?
It was both of those things. It was all of those things. On one hand, it was cathartic, which the book had been for me as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, this just a little aside, after I wrote the book, which, I haven't read since I wrote it, right? And someone will say to me somewhere or whatever, oh, I so related to the time that you whatever, or this, and I'm like, how do you know that? Why do you? And then I'm like, oh, that's right. I wrote it in a book, because Danny always says, if I want to know what's really going on in your life, I'll come to one of your shows, because I've always sort of worn it all on my sleeve. So it was cathartic, but, the difference, when you're an actor and you're playing a role, you imbue that role with your personal experiences, because then it's what makes it authentic, right? That's what makes it real for you, the actor. You apply your specifics. Well, in this case, they literally are my specifics. So it was a different kind of challenge to go through playing these different characters that were real people for me, and also through the sort of emotional ups and downs of my life. And as you mentioned, some of them were difficult, including a suicide attempt, and sort of reliving that and what that was hard to do, night after night. But I've been doing this long enough that I'm able to just turn it off at the end of the show. I don't carry it past the stage door. I couldn't. That would really hurt me, destroy me. So I can turn it off.
Well, you take us on an incredible emotional journey, my friend. You should be so proud of this, because it is flawless. It is sensational. It's theatrical. It's honest. It's heartfelt. I mean, it's just really beautiful. How has being a dad and a husband changed the way you look at your life and career?
Wow.
It's a big question.
Yeah. You and I grew up in a generation where when we were kids, what's happening now was not even possible. It wasn't fathomable. As you said, there was no one. There were no role models. There was not an actor or an athlete or a politician or any of that. Now we're full. We see it everywhere. There was no one. So the idea of being married and having a kid was literally not even something that you could think about wishing for. It wasn't on the table. And it wasn't even bad. It was difficult and sad, but it was something that I think so many of us just accepted. That's who I am. It's sad, but so the fact that in this generation, we've gone from it being illegal and shameful and the taboo in the worst sense of the word, to a time when we are married legally and recognized by the government and equal rights and no discrimination, and then to be able to have a child, in our case, adopt a child, it's extraordinary. So it is so precious to me. And you asked me how it's affected my career. Well, when Cooper was born, I decided I'm not gonna go on the road. I'm not gonna tour or go on concert things for long periods of time, in and out. I did it in and out, but it is my priority. And I'll be honest, Richie, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's hurt my career because I haven't been able to singly focus on myself. However, I am not singly focusing on myself. And being in this business and for so many years, when it really was all about me, I was ready for it to not be. And, you know, in my house, I'm definitely third on the list and sixth if you count the dogs. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful. So that's how it's affected my career. And on the other side of that, I'm writing books. I'm writing books. I'm doing plays that are about, you know, so it's changed in that way too. I don't know that I would have done that had I not had a child.
So you actually have it all, actually, when you come to think about it. You were able to sort of change the way your career has gone. I mean, we're going to get into the novel later too, but I mean, you've done so many incredible things since you become a dad. And I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank
Before
you.
we go on, you know, I want to go back to the beginning. Growing up, what were your earliest creative outlets, and where did your love for theater begin? For those people who may not know.
Sure. I was lucky in that I knew what I wanted to do when I was like 3.
Yeah.
You know, I would stand on the dining room table and, you know, dance and sing and I fell. You know, we didn't have a great deal of theater I lived in a little town outside of Tulsa called Sand Springs, and Tulsa had some things going on, and we would have concert tours and things coming in. But I just fell in love as a means of escape, as a means of expression. I was prodigious in that I could memorize a song super quick, and I loved to make up stories. And I think as I grew a little bit older, it became a means of escape for me, a means of fantasy. But I was so sort of focused and driven, even at an early age, that I would make all the neighborhood kids be in my productions in my basement. You know, I would force them. And everything was about that. And then when I was about 10, I started doing shows at Tulsa Little Theater with adults. Oh my God, with adults. Guess what? Jason Graw and I were newsboys in Gypsy when I was 10 years old. Can you believe that?
Okay, because I saw that picture that goes by at the end of the credits, and I was like, who is he with, and who is your Mama Rose?
Our Mama Rose was a woman named Nancy Vunovich, she was Ethel Merman. I mean, she was an insanely amazing talent. The fact that I can remember her name, and Jason's mother was Tessie Tura. But it was a good production. You know, and then the kids, because, you know, we're not in the second act. The newsboys are Baby June and Little Louise. And so we used to play strip poker up 3 flights up backstage in the costume room. And we played strip poker. We'd put our layers of costumes on and then play strip poker. And once in a while, Baby June would bring a little, you know, hooch from her parents' liquor cabinet.
How old were you again?
10.
I love it. That's the life of a theater person. You know, I want to give there's so many wonderful early stories that take place in the film, but I want people to experience it on their own. But I just reread your book. I actually listened, anybody out there, get Sam's book, but listen to his reading of it on Google Play, because I love to hear people read their books. I think you and I had the same childhood. I was obsessed with the film Mary Poppins. Obsessed.
Oh, you were?
When I was 4 years old, my father took us, and I mean, he took us to Corvettes to get the album, but there was only monorails. There weren't stereos left, but there was a whole line of them. I said, why can't we have this album? He said, we have to come back next week where they have the stereo version in. And my neighbor had a Mary Poppins spoon, and I was obsessed with this spoon. Now, tell us your Mary Poppins story.
Wow. Okay. I was 3 years old. My father took me. I know that it was Valentine's Day, because he picked me up at preschool, and I remember there were these little, you know, candy cardboard, or, you know, in the little box hearts. And we saw Mary Poppins, and my father was not always available. And so this was very special. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. It was very special. And I think that had something to do with the fact that we were seeing a movie about an absent father that then came around I'm sure that was psychologically part of it for me. Anyway, we watched it. We sat in the smoking section, and he smoked the whole time and watched Mary Poppins. And I was so enthralled and I loved it so much. And I said, can we stay again? And we never got up, and we sat through the next showing. So I saw it twice. And by then, and I could memorize things easily. And I came home and I knew bits and pieces, chunks of the score. And it was huge for me, huge. And then to your spoon story, I was at my aunt's house in Kansas. My family was there. And I was much older, 18, 19, something like that. And I went into my aunt's cabinet to get a glass. And there sat a little Mary Poppins plastic cup and a plate. And I said, where did you get these? They were from that year. She said, well, I got them for you, but your father wouldn't let me give them to you because he thought you were, being a sissy. At 3. Yeah. At 3.
He kept that cup and saucer from you. How dare he?
Right? How dare he? So I marched in to the living room where he was watching football with my family. And I said, what are these? What are these? He's like, what are you talking about? I don't know. And I told him what my aunt told me. I was so mad. I was so devastated. So then I got them. I don't know where the plate is, but I have the cup. And it sits in my son's room on his shelf. And then, like 2 years ago, I was directing a show here, and Dick Van Dyke was making an appearance in it. And I took it to him and I told him this story, and he signed it. So now it's come full circle, poetic justice, that happened with me. And now it sits on my son's shelf in his room.
I love that full circle moment. That's how it works in life. That's how it works. Good for you. I just wanted to share that story because when I read the book again, I was like, oh my God, we all have a Mary Poppins story.
Yeah. Now, you didn't steal the spoon or anything, did you?
I ate at their house all the time. I was obsessed, and I said, please, can I eat with this spoon? I didn't know what I ordered it. So I would literally eat everything that didn't even take a spoon. I would eat with this very spoon. So, I told you, we have the same childhood, Sam. We have the same childhood.
Apparently so.
All right. You have such an amazing career that has taken you all around the world. I like to mention a few of the highlights and just tell me what comes to mind, a great story or a fun memory. Okay, now, millions of people, including myself, fell in love with you each week during Star Search. Now, those watching who may not know, Star Search was before American Idol, before The Voice, before America's Got Talent. I think each week there were like over 25 million people that watched you for 14 weeks. Am I right?
Yeah, because, we're so old, Richie. But in those days, there weren't 4 million stations and, cable and all that stuff. There were 3 or 4. And so audiences for television shows that were popular were enormous. Now, if a popular sitcom gets 8 or 9 million people, it's a triumph. Yeah, we had 25 million people a week. And so that is a lot of visibility. But, it didn't shoot. It shot in advance. It wasn't live. And I don't think it started airing until 4 or 5 weeks after I had shot them. So I was doing this show in Los Angeles of my own creation called Out of Control in a 50-seat theater on Santa Monica Boulevard in Theater Row, which Theater Row means like it's a bunch of black box theaters, right? I was doing these shows, and I'd done them for months late at night, and I had 3 backup singers called the International Pancakes. And I was doing these shows in this little black box theater, and while I was winning this TV show that no one had seen yet because it hadn't aired. And then it started to air, and it was like, what? All of a sudden, you
had an audience.
What?
You had an audience all of a sudden, right?
Not 50 people, right? It was insane. It turned me around. It was a dream. It was a dream, that kind of attention. And it was a dream because I was getting to choose. Unlike a lot of the shows now, there was no catalog, there was no stylist, there was no, mentor or whatever, which is all great. But this was sort of raw and new. And so I sang what I wanted to sing and I wore what I wanted to wear, which was kind of, funky and odd. And I got to be myself and I got to choose my material, which was a reflection of myself. So it wasn't a pop catalog, right? And I think probably that's what, in retrospect, I think that's probably what made it work for me was there was an authenticity there, that there was an honesty there of this kid who was sort of, telling my truth. And it's so funny, Richie, when I look back at the songs I sang, they were all about needing to be free and hope. They were all about, they were God Bless the Child and I Shall Be Released and Over the Rainbow and these songs that were It's My Turn. There were these songs that were about needing to be free, of needing to have hope, of dreaming. And of course that reflected, I didn't even realize that till years later. My whole career, most of the songs have either been about loss or great hope. And yeah, it was, I was subconsciously picking these things.
Well, everybody could relate to you because that was the other thing. I think these shows nowadays, there's no freedom to them. They're all calculated. Everybody said, oh, you'll be this one, you'll be that one. Back then, everybody was themselves. It wasn't calculated like a lot of these shows are now. And that's why I love looking back at old star searches and everything else. I was like, everybody on that show could just be themselves. You were Sam Harris. You didn't have to be, they didn't make you into Sam Harris. You brought each week what you wanted to bring to it and sang what you wanted to sing.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, because they weren't trying to create, American, they weren't trying to create stars. It just happened. Meanwhile, and you know this, it was when it first started, because it was the first season, they didn't have, until the next seasons, they didn't have people around the block, lining up and sending in tapes and doing all that stuff. So they were scouting, talent scouts around town in Los Angeles. And I was playing this dumpy little, that little black box theater. And so they asked me to come in. And it was so new that the people, the producers and everybody and the director, in a small room, I would say the room was, I'm going to say 15 by 20 tops, maybe not even that big, no smaller. It was like an office space. And they were all sitting behind the table, scrunched up. There was no room for the piano in the room. So the piano was in the hall. I stood in the door frame and sang to them. And they rejected me because I was too theatrical. And it's, I was. And then there were two talent scouts there. And I know them, Steve Stark and Jan Wallner. And they, after the fourth episode, they said, you know what, can we revisit this? Because he wasn't cookie cutter, but there was something there. There was something interesting and I could sing. So that's when they asked me to come on. But originally I was just like the axe.
Interesting. Because I was going to ask you, after that, you were catapulted to literally overnight stardom. I mean, you got an incredible recording contract with Motown. We all had the albums. I vividly remember all of these covers. They're just in the kitchen in my record cabinet right now. But I mean, we remember all of that. I mean, you platinum winning, platinum selling recording artist. You were taken all around the world. What's the biggest life lesson that you learned from the star search and that huge recording time, that big blow up in your life? What's the biggest life lesson you took away from that time?
Listen to people. Everything was happening so fast. And because I had attained this level of, visibility and respect for doing exactly what I was and what I wanted to do, and being so true that it's easy not to listen to other people because I was afraid it would compromise what I had created. And I had wonderful people, in the show There's a lot about Jerry Blatt, who was my director and mentor, taught me about life, taught me about honesty on the stage. But he was so out there. You know, in my first, when I played Carnegie Hall, and I had this whole little mini segment where I was in this, you know, of course, oversized jacket, and I built these cubes on the stage, and I climbed up and I sang God Bless the Child. And at the end of it, I pulled a gun out of my jacket pocket and shot myself in the head. And then, I mean, it was gone. It was out there, you know, but this is also a time when pop artists like Peter Gabriel and David Byrne and these people were making these psychological and cultural statements. It wasn't just get up and sing a song. They were powerful things and images, but it was pretty out there. And I did not listen to people who were a little bit more pop centric, or I wasn't interested in, oh my God, go away. I wasn't interested in mainstream.
Yeah.
I was so afraid of being mainstream. I didn't listen. And I'm not a big regrets person.
Yeah.
But that's a lesson. You asked me what I learned. I needed to listen more.
Beautifully put. So honest. Like I said, we were there at Carnegie Hall. We were there for all of your big things in New York, just so you know. Well, I was there. I love that. God Bless the Child. Then you blew your head off. I was like, wow. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it at Carnegie Hall. You know, you made your Broadway debut in the first revival of Grease, where you stopped the show at every performance as Judy with that incredible, your roof-raising rendition of those magic changes. I mean, how magical was your Broadway debut? What do you remember?
Well, it was certainly a dream. It was a dream. When I got the call about it, Rosie O'Donnell and I knew each other from Briar, from Star Search and all that. And she had gotten the call, and we were like, are you going to do this? Are you going to do this? Because I didn't imagine that my first Broadway show would be something so insipid. I didn't imagine that it would be something so light and silly. I thought it would be something important. I thought it would be something, you know, for the ages.
It was Grease.
What?
It was Grease.
It was Grease. And you'll love this story because we were all in our early 30s. Or, you know, Rosie and I were. There were some in their 20s, of course, but nobody was a teenager. And I was asked to come in and audition. And I was told beforehand, it was a giant room. It was at a church. It was here in LA. It was a giant room. And damn it, who was the casting director? I don't remember.
Oh, someone will look it up. Some fan who's watching now will look it up. So
yeah, exactly. Oh, damn it. Anyway, he said to me, stand at the back of the room as far away from the table as you can, because they want a perspective of what you would look like from the house, because you know spring chicken, you know. So I stood at the back of the room, and then I went up at the end to Fran and Barry Weissler, and I was like, look, see? No wrinkles.
That is great.
Doing that show was such a thrill, and it was so many of our debuts. I think maybe everyone in the cast, it might have been everybody's Broadway debut. It might have been. Yeah. I mean, talk about thrilling. And we were on the road for like 4 or 5 months prior, all over the place to get it right, you know. But it was a thrill. But you know what, though, Richie, I am such a fan of the theater. I mean, like, I'm just a silly fan. I get excited every single time I walk through a stage door. And when you walk those boards of people who have preceded you, the great people, or you have a dressing room that somebody extraordinary was in 1943 or whatever, I am just such a fan of it. And of course, when you do 8 shows a week for a long period of time, you're not like, oh, I can't wait to, you know, it's up and down. But there's always that beat. There's always that moment when I go, and it's the same if I go onto a studio lot and I'm in, you know, on a soundstage where they filmed, you know, some Betty Davis movie. I'm a fan. And I'm always curious. So I think that's what keeps me going.
That's great. Well, you did a huge tour of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. You went all around the United States. I had Patrick Cassidy here last week, and we talked about the loin skirt and the diaper.
The diaper. The hardest thing about that show was working out all the time because you're practically naked. They stuck a mic up in my wig because they didn't want any wires because you're naked. Yeah. And that was the show is wonderful in that you don't, as Joseph, everybody talks about you all the time. They're singing about you, they're talking about you, and then you are there and you're either you get to sing a big song or you're funny. And so it was really wonderful. And I did some things with the songs that I was able to pop around and kind of do my thing with. But that was great. You're in such a bubble when you're on the road. Because I was out with that show for like 15 or 16 months. And so you live in a vacuum. And of course, like any cast, you become a family. I am still so close to so many people in that show. And that's where Danny and I met.
That's right.
He played Dan. His name is Danny Jacobson, and he played Dan Jacobs' son. Anyway. Yeah, that's where we met, and now it's been 26 years.
Was it love at first sight? Like, did you like look at him and say, "Oh my gosh"?
Kinda.
Okay.
Kinda. Although it scared me. It scared me. But as the star, I was able to manipulate Secret Santa. So we were in New York rehearsing for the show, and it was Christmas, so we were doing Secret Santa, and I would be like, no, pulling out of the hat. No. Oh, Danny Jacobson. Yeah, okay, I'll take that.
That's what stars get away with. That's what you Did you start dating during the run?
Yeah.
Good for you.
We started dating during the run, and by the end of the run, he was staying at the Ritz-Carlton instead of the Red Roof Inn. And then we moved to New York.
And now look, that's great.
And now look, here we are with a child. And he has become this extraordinarily, and I mean extraordinarily successful businessman, using so many things that he learned as an actor and as a performer. And now he's got this business of his own in which he works with these blue chip companies on authenticity and selling yourself and, focusing and leadership. It's so great to say my husband is the best at what he does. I'm really proud of him.
That's great. You have a huge recording career. You recorded so many things, your Motown albums, all your other albums you've done. You got to work with the legendary Peter Matz on Standard Time and different stages. Now, you did this old school. It was a live orchestra. You sang live. I mean, the biggest pinch me moment, what was it like working with Peter Matz, the legendary arranger?
The legendary arranger and orchestrator. Yeah. He was a genius, and he was so freaking funny.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time together because, like you said, we did it old school. And for those of you who don't know Peter Matz, first of all, he did like the first 7 Barbra Streisand records. He created that sound. He did those arrangements and orchestrations, and he was old school. He was the real deal. And so we spent weeks and weeks and weeks picking the songs. He and I just in his studio, his office, basically, piled stacks of Emmys and things. And we just sat down on his little spinet and would arrange songs and do things. And then he went away for like 2 weeks and came back having orchestrated 20 songs or something, 2 records. And I was in shape. I had to get in shape because I knew that we were going to be recording all of these songs in 2 days. 2 days. So I was fairly isolated, but there's an orchestra and the great Peter Matz conducting. And I sang that we did the songs. We did a few takes of each one, got things right. I had never heard the orchestra before. So I had like one pass hearing the orchestrations and recording it. It's not like I was doing these forever. And we did it and we finished it. And we were mixing and stuff, and I would say, can I fix that? Can I fix that? Can I fix that? And he said no. He let me fix a couple of things, but he said no. That's what happened. You were in shape to do this, and that little, I could be like, I could hold that longer, or I could sing that better, or I'm too whatever. And he would say, no, that's what happened. That was the real experience of what happened. It's a performance, and so that's what you hear.
Oh, I love that you did those, because like I said, I love those albums. I think those are absolutely sensational live, just like Sinatra used to do and all the rest of them. Really, really brilliant.
Well, that's what you do when you do a cast album, right? Yeah.
Totally. Well, you return to Broadway, and one of my all-time favorite musicals, it's all behind me, The Life, Cy Coleman's The Life. I mean, how life-changing was that show and that role of JoJo for you? I love that show.
Thank you. I love that show.
Yeah.
And working with, I was talking about me being a fan. Cy Coleman, who was Cy freaking Coleman, was like a little kid. He would get excited every day at rehearsal. He couldn't contain himself. And this cast was so extraordinary. And they had been working on this show for years in different workshops. The role of JoJo was something that had not been added until near the end. And so they'd done these workshops. Then they realized they needed this sort of Iago character to connect everything. And then, those great songs, Use What You've Got and Mr. Greed and all these things were written. And it was thrilling. Now, I do have to tell you, though, as much as Cy was like that, and I adore him, that poster in my background, the Life, that Cy gave posters to everybody, and so it's signed on the back by Cy, and so I treasure it. But one day we were rehearsing Mr. Greed, and Joey McNeely was choreographing, and he changed the choreography like every 15 minutes. He was always changing the choreography. And I'm a dancer, but I'm not really a dancer. I kind of pull it off, sort of. And this was my song, and I was, it was my song and dance with the other guys. He was changing it, and I was like singing along and trying to get this, and it was making me crazy. And Cy walks from one side of the room to the other, as which he says this. I'll give you here's what he did. You're not going to sing it that way, are you? And I took him aside and I said, Mr. Coleman, I will do anything you want. I will sing it any way you want to. But please don't ever humiliate me in front of the company again. And he was so sorry. And he called me his secret weapon. But what a cast. Oh, my God. Pam Isaacs, Lillias White, Chuck Cooper. I mean, geez. It was a great experience. Although, can I tell you a quick story? Do we have time? A little life story?
Yeah.
Everybody has their version of this. Yeah. And there's a famous one about West Side Story, but that's similar. But James Stovall was the cover for what's the lead? What's the name of the role? The drug addict guy. Anyway,
not so scary. So scary.
Yeah. So he was on, and at the end, he's supposed to shoot Chuck Cooper, Memphis. And he's standing behind me during this fight scene, and he says, I forgot the gun. I don't have the gun. And I'm the only one that can hear him, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Because he was supposed to give it to Pam Isaacs, and there's this whole, when we're fighting, and there was nothing there. And so I just ran over to Chuck and just pretended I was stabbing him. And half the company was like, what is going on? The other half knew what was happening at that point. It was, and this is such a beautiful, dramatic ending of the show. And Lillias and Pam had this gorgeous duet. Well, no one could get through. Well, actually the duet was before then, but no one could get through this. We were trying not to laugh at this most dramatic moment in the show. You know, the West Side Story.
Oh, yeah.
That, right?
Yeah.
How many stabs are in this knife?
Totally.
Well, probably because I heard that is what I knew what to do.
That's a great story. I remember seeing the matinee the day before you opened, and I think the show was 3.5 hours long. It didn't matter. I remember that day, and we were like, Preston and I were there together. We were sitting like in the 5th row on the aisle, and it was like 3.5 hours long, and it was like one of the most incredible things I had ever seen. It was the day before you opened.
Opened or previewed?
No, this was the day before you opened.
And we were still at 3.5 hours?
I loved it. Yes, we kept saying it was wild. Yes.
Oh my God. It was long. I thought we'd cut it, I thought they'd cut it down by then because it was a very long show. But that was, Cy was so brilliant. Yeah. And Michael Blakemore was the director, British dude. And I think everything was too precious to them. Yeah. It was too precious because they needed, everything does.
But when we saw it, we loved it. Everything about it. There was nothing in that afternoon I would have cut.
Yeah, but you're a Broadway whore, though, Richie.
Of course I am. So it's like, the longer the better. I love to watch all this stuff and then go back and see it cut. You returned to Broadway as Carmen Gia, one of my favorite Carmens of all time in The Producers. You must have so many favorite memories of doing that show.
Oh my God. Well, I worked with the great Gary Beach. First of all, I had never replaced. So I was terrified. And Roger Bart originated the role. It was brilliant. Yeah. To have to follow that was really scary. And so all I had was a week. I was used to having 6 weeks, right? All I had was a week. And then we had the put in, and I was in full, regale with Carmen, and no one else was because they were just doing the put in. And I remember sweating so hard, and Stroman just giving me all these notes and all this stuff. And I was so scared and overwhelmed. And I went on like that night or the next night. But Gary Beach, he was truly a genius. He was a genius. And I remember on the opening night that I went there, we're waiting to go on. And if, as you know, but for those of you who didn't see it, Carmen Gia has this brilliant entrance. This whole set of their crazy apartment comes downstage, and I'm on the phone. And right before I went out, terrified, Gary whispers in my ear, "Scare them. Scare them." And it just freed me. And so I got to be as ridiculous and outlandish as possible. And then something else, because, Gary was the king of long runs. Oh, yeah. He would do a show until it ran itself to death in the dirt. He would play years on things. It was his blood. In his blood. So to mix it up, he would say, let's say we've had a couple of cocktails tonight. And we would go out and play scenes where we're just a little tipsy. No one else knew, but we did. Or he would say, let's say we've just had a fight and we're trying to make up. And you know how there's always subtext. There's always something going on, even though you're saying this. So he would fill it with these secrets that we had to keep ourselves alive. He's brilliant. I learned so much from him. So much.
He was the greatest. I loved him. He was a dear friend, just the greatest soul, the greatest heart. And like you said, would just take you under his wing and say, we're doing this together.
Yeah.
Really great. I can't believe
I was fortunate because everyone so embraced me. And I think it's hard. And that show was so huge. And Roger and Gary were such a brilliant team. And I was so embraced by Gary, who could have been, another actor would have been like, sorry, it ain't you. You know what I mean? But he wasn't. He was wonderful.
You were brilliant in that. I can't believe we're almost out of time, but we have to talk about you becoming a writer. All right. I love your book, too. This brand new book you've written, your first fiction novel. It's critically acclaimed. It's called The Substance of All Things.
You read this?
Of course I did. Hello.
Oh God, I love you so much.
It's such a beautiful story. I can see this as a film. I hope you're selling this as a film. I'm just putting it out.
It's a film. That's the plan.
Okay.
That's definitely the plan.
All right. Well, it's beautiful. How did you come about to write this?
After Ham, at Simon & Schuster, they took me to lunch. My plan was to write a series of this sort of essays, right? And they sat me down and they said, we want you to write fiction. We think you have the chops. We know you have the chops to write fiction. And I was blown away. I was thrilled and flattered, but that sounded so scary to me. That's just huge. So I didn't know what to do. And I toyed around with things and I played with things. And it took me a year of a writer's block, which I'd never had a writer's block. And I was sitting with a good friend of mine. We were at our friends Doug and Paula for a dinner party. And he started asking, he said, I've never known you to be blunt like this. He started asking me questions about my life and my childhood. And all of a sudden it clicked for me. I got a legal pad and sat in the corner while everybody ate dinner. And I started writing this book. And as you know, there's two stories. There's young Theo, which is he's 12 years old in 1968 in Oklahoma. And then there's older Theo, who is a therapist. And it's through his work with this very broken woman that he's able to deal with a summer, because young Theo, as you know, is a healer. It's complicated, but I thank you for that. I love writing, and I'm so proud of this book. And the response has been great.
It's like I said, you've written television series. I mean, Down to Earth ran 4 years. I mean, did you love the world of television, like writing for television?
You know what? I was so young and I just thought everything was easy. Yeah. I didn't realize that people, had to work for years. And I was so young. When Down to Earth happened, I was 22.
Yeah.
And Bruce Newberg and I sold the show and wrote the first season. And then Star Search happened. Yeah. And, I was like, oh, okay, next. I didn't really realize how wonderful it was to have a show on TV for 4 years. I just expected these things to happen until I got old enough to find out that they don't.
Well, you definitely have a guardian angel sitting on your shoulder, because that was a fabulous. I used to watch that with my nephew. I used to love that. He used to love that show. So I just want to let you know. Almost out of time, but
I was going to say though, and we know anybody who's done Broadway, anybody who's been in film, the truth is it does take years. Like The Light was in development for 7 years. It does take years. It's not always that thing. I have had more projects and more things rejected and reworked and redeveloped and rewritten and done. It's part of it. So I don't feel like I have the guardian angel as much as I feel like I have chutzpah and tenacity.
All right.
Damn it.
You have two guardian angels. Those are their names. They sit on both of your shoulders. So, Sam, my final question for you is sort of a two-parter. It's, what are you the proudest of in your life, and what have you learned the most about yourself during this pandemic?
Well, it's going to sound cliche, but what I'm proudest of in my life is my son, and that we did this, and my family, my husband and my son, that we did this, that it's the largest responsibility. It makes me be my best person, makes me be better than I am. It tests everything in me, and it gives me my greatest joy. So that I'm work-wise, the substance of all things is my heart and soul, and this show, which kicked my ass doing that show, and I'm so glad, and this film. So those are very proud. What have I learned during the pandemic? I've learned that, once again, that there is always more ways to do something than what you think. That curiosity and the need for something can be fulfilled in different ways, just like this, Richie, just like this show, just what you're doing. We think things are one thing, and then that door shuts or gets stuck somehow, and there's another way to do it, and sometimes that way is better. When you focus only on A, B, and C, you don't get to see that L, M, and N are there, which might be better. So that's what I think I've learned the most of.
That is great. Like I said, this hour has flown by, but I want to remind everybody. I know. Can you believe this?
I know.
Once again, Sam's critically acclaimed, award-winning autobiographical show, Ham and Musical Memoir, has been beautifully filmed and is streaming at Broadway HD. And I believe that if you go to Broadway HD and type in Sam Ham in lowercase, you may get 3 free months of Broadway HD. So like I said, we're hoping that this works. Right, Sam?
Yeah, I think it should. They're doing this big promotion on it. But yeah, I want people to see this. I'm so proud of this.
Like I said, and read his new book, The Substance of All Things, and Ham, A Slices of Life. You have to read his book, because just to hear him read all of this stuff and to hear some of the stories that didn't make it into the show, like the Mary Poppins story.
And I did an audible of Substance of All Things recently, too. We added that. But I've realized, what I've realized through this interview, Richie, is if I need to know anything about myself, I just have to call you,
Totally. I've known you forever. Seriously.
I know. I've known you forever.
It does go back to Rainbow and Stars, but I'm just so proud of everything that's happened for you. You have had everything happen in your career. You've had ups, you've had downs, you've had huge highs, you've had some lows, but look where you are now. You're happily married. You've got a beautiful son. You have a great career. You've written an incredible new book. You have an incredible show. You've accomplished a lot, my friend, and you stayed humble and you've always stayed really sweet. And that's what I love about you the most.
Thank you, Richie. And I get to talk to you.
Yeah, totally. So everybody, we're going to leave with a clip. We're going to give you a fabulous clip of Sam's show. So please enjoy this. And hey, I'm a musical memoir. And stay safe, everyone. And we'll see you really soon. Enjoy. Take care.
Stay safe.
Hey, I've always been this way. It's my curse, my kiss, my blood, my bliss that keeps me on display. Suck it up, Harris. You're in show business. Somewhere over the rainbow. It was the summer I fell in love. His name was Scott Pierce, and he looked just like Cary Grant, and he loved me back. And I knew that it was pure, and it was good, and it was unspeakable. I took all the seconals with a giant glass of water and stared at myself in the mirror. Oh, why? I just want to be happy. Seriously? How am I doing? Get ready for me life, cause I'm a comer. I simply gotta march, my heart's a drum, I know. But I know nobody. It's got no